What if I told you that the world-renowned, globally accepted, historical religious concept that is the seven deadly sins was not a controlling system of suppression, but in fact potentially holds the keys to your own self-realization, inner power, and liberation. Welcome everyone to another episode of Coffee Shop Chats. I am your host, Chloe Rose, founder of Mystic Hearts. Coffee Shop Chats are our intimate conversation where we dive deep into some perhaps controversial topics, and I invite you to join me with your favourite beverage. For some weird reason, I am using my Christmas cup, cats though of course, and I am drinking a coffee today. I need that little bit of caffeine buzz. So if you haven't already, please pause this video and go and grab your favourite beverage so you can join me in the coffee shop at Mystic Hearts headquarters. This is going to be a juicy one. Cheers. And just to let you know, as always, any information that I share, I'm not claiming it to be profound or brand new. I am merely expressing and sharing topics of conversation that I feel are relevant to humanity at this time through the lens of my own experience. And all I hope is to educate, empower, inspire or enchant you with some of these topics that I'm about to share. However, if you identify as a Christian or someone who is very attached to a monotheistic religious belief system, you may get triggered by this video. So that is your warning right there. I am only sharing this with love, and I'm only sharing this from a place of hoping that we can all become more compassionate, open-hearted, and open-minded, expressive, sensual human beings. So as I mentioned, today's Coffee Shop Chats is going to be unpacking the historical religious concept of the seven deadly sins. Now, I've had a lot of fun researching for this today. And actually the inspiration came from this because, well, why it came was because I'm watching this anime TV show called The Seven Deadly Sins. And I was like, I freaking love this because they are making the seven deadly sins into superheroes and they've totally rewritten the story and it just made it so fun and whimsical. But I did a few years back read a book. It was quite a feminist book about the seven deadly sins and how that idea of the seven deadly sins have really fed into the suppression and oppression of divine feminine magic and power, which we are going to be diving into more deeply and really getting to understand why. And what I want to point out is that I'm not saying that the seven deadly sins are right or wrong. I'm actually going to be exploring them with you and just exploring them in a much more open-minded perspective and just reflecting on what they are, what they mean, what the connotations of them are, what's perhaps lying beneath the surface, and maybe how we could transform each of these sins to something perhaps a little bit more productive and helpful for us as individuals. So much fun. Right, I'm gonna have some more coffee. Even though I shouldn't be with this lipstick. It's supposed to be long wear lipstick, but it's not that great. But I just love the colour. Cheers. And if you are a fan of coffee shop chats, let me know in the comments. I love, love, love reading your comments. And if you're watching this with me and something comes up that you want me to dig and dive deeper into, please let me know in the comments, because I love it. I love being sent on a magical mystery quest of digging into some of these interesting religious, mystical, esoteric, dark, goddess, sexy, sensual topics. That is what gets me excited and passionate. So feel free to share your requests and feedback, and also all opinions and experiences are welcome here. So let's start off. First of all, I have done some research. I have used Wikipedia and I've used Google AI just to get some very black and white information, which is going to be like the framework of this conversation today. So, what are the 7 deadly sins? This is like the official Wikipedia description of the 7 deadly sins, which already I found to be quite interesting. The 7 deadly sins, or capital vices. Okay, I'm going to pause already. What does the word vice mean? A vice to me brings up connotations of like a torture device. A vice, it's something that keeps us encased and restrained. So interesting there that they are called capital vices. It's already got quite a threatening overtone to it. And a deadly sin, you know, like if you commit this, you're going to die. Pretty dramatic, if you ask me. And I must say that I've probably committed all of the 7 deadly sins multiple times in my lifetime, and I'm pretty sure that I'm still here alive and kicking. So yeah, we might have to rewrite even the name of 7 deadly sins, or capital vices. Although vices, I get much more why they're called vices, because I actually really see some of these as a compression or control system, not compression, oppression. So, the 7 deadly sins, or capital vices, are a traditional grouping of major vices in Christian theology. They are considered deadly because they are believed to foster further sinful behaviour. All right. So apparently these are like the gateway to further sinful behaviour. So these are like the gateway drugs of emotional behaviour. Interesting. Okay, so they are believed to foster further sinful behaviour and distance believers from God. Interesting. So, apparently, if this description is true, then that means that the love of God is conditional. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Because the teachings of Jesus and Mary Magdalene are unconditional love, unconditional, compassionate love. So there's already some confusing contradictions going on here. These vices are not explicitly listed together in the Bible, again, interesting, but developed through early church tradition. Interesting. So what this reminds me of is like, your girl has done research. Like, I'm not just someone who's showing up here with an opinion. Like, I have researched. I am a curious, inquisitive soul. I love knowledge and I love to explore things and I love to gain as much of an understanding as I can so that I can be compassionate, but also to hold my own opinion as well. So what I've learned through studying monotheistic religions, that's Christianity and Catholicism, Judaism and Islam, what's interesting is that in the modern world that we live in, these religions hold such a weight that it is believed, or there's this sort of masking belief system that everything in these religions, everything that is taught, systems of belief, systems of behaviour, is messages that are directly channeled from God. And what I learned through doing a lot of diligent research is that in actual fact, a lot of the original religious scriptures of the monotheistic religions were rewritten and expanded and changed by many different men over many, 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 many years. So that original channeling from the prophets, from Jesus, from Muhammad, from whoever else, has been rewritten, probably lost some of the message in there over time, and come together into these books which hold so much weight, which have really just been written by men over many different time periods to fit into their narrative of what they would like the general masses to believe and to follow. I'm sorry if you're not a fan of that theory or that opinion, but that is what I have come to know and believe through my own research. So just putting that out there. So, where did the 7 deadly sins begin? In the 4th century, they were from a Greco-Roman monk who decided to write a list of evil thoughts. And they were similar to the 7 deadly sins, just slightly different. And then we jump to the 6th century, and then the Roman Catholic Church really took them on, and they started making them like a meaty system then, with Pope Gregory. And he wrote the 7 deadly sins. And then we jump way forward now to the 13th century. Thomas Aquinas, which he titled them capital sins. And when we think of capital sins, that has the overtone of capital punishment, capital sin. Like, these are crimes that you should be punished for. And I find all of this, just the wording of it, so interesting. Deadly sins, a deadly sin, like the weight of that is so heavy. You know, it's literally like, if you commit one of these sins, you should die for it, or, you know, you're going to burn in hell, or it's giving that. And you're probably thinking, why are you laughing, Chloe? Because when we're going to read through these sins together, I hope I'm going to make you see the perspective of how none of these sins are in fact sins or deadly, but the wording is so carefully placed that it's manipulated us into thinking that we should act, speak, think and behave a certain way that is in actual fact suppressing our innate power and magic and freedom and expression and all the juicy good stuff. And not even that. I honestly feel that these 7 deadly sins are holding us back from having a true spiritual experience, which to me means honouring accepting and embracing that we are a soul having a human experience, and we are God, and therefore everyone and everything is God and everything is interconnected, and to call one thing good and one thing evil is to call the pot calling the kettle black, and it is separating us from oneness and from unity, and it's not allowing us to see the divinity in polarities and in the scale of positive and negative, and seeing that one reality actually cannot exist without the other. So it's super juicy. You can probably see how like excited and passionate I am to talk about this, and I'm really caffeinated, so it's helping. So cheers again. When you're watching this, let me know what you're drinking as well in the chat, and where you are and what time of day it is, because I'd love to know what drink you're having. Here it's midday in the UK. Midday is like my cut-off point for my coffee. So good. All right, so let's dive in to the sins. Number 1, and I find this really interesting because this is called the root sin. Number 1, the root sin, which leads to all other sins. Guess what it is? Pride. And to me, I'm like, this is mind-boggling, because to me, pride is such an important, healthy human emotion. Not only human, but like animalistic emotion to embody pride. And I'm going to read out the Latin name as well. Superbia. 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 How can that be a deadly sin? Superbia. I'm feeling superbia today. So, this is the official Wikipedia meaning of pride. An excessive belief in one's own abilities or worth that leads to a perception of superiority and a rejection of God's authority. So immediately to me, this is screaming religious programming. Because I actually looked at a few different descriptions of pride. So this was a description of pride in relation to the 7 deadly sins. So now I've just done a general description of pride, and it's got quite a different narrative. Listen to this. Pride. Self-respect and pleasure in one's own or another's achievements. A sense of self-worth. And we are being told that this is a deadly sin. So no wonder this is the root sin. Now, I don't know about you, but I cannot help but feel some sinister undertone here. Why would we be told that having self-respect and pleasure in our own achievements and others' achievements, like our friends, our family, our loved ones, our kids, and a sense of self-worth is an evil sin? Something to think about, something to ponder on. Because what they're claiming here is that believing in yourself causes you to think you're better than others. And I totally disagree with that. Like, I actually couldn't disagree more. And I'm speaking from my own experience here, because when I've been the most kind of judgmental and thinking myself like better or superior than others, it hasn't been when I've believed in myself. It's when I've had a false sense of belief in myself because I have placed my worth in external things. Like, for example, veganism, or only believing one dogmatic sense of spiritual beliefs. So what's really interesting is that what I would consider to be, this perception of superiority is actually a characteristic that comes across within some individuals who are very much attached to a religious belief system or any kind of belief system. So I find this really quite insidious, because pride, when I think of pride, I think of that as like divine masculine energy. You know, it's like the leader of the pack leading forwards, like, I'm proud of myself and I'm going to lead others. Pride. Or it could be a mother, you know, who's like leading her children. It's that real, like, motherly, fatherly, strong, loving, grounded energy and embodiment. And we're being told that that is a sin. It is a sin to believe in ourselves. And I'm not okay with that. And what's interesting is when I set out to film this video today, I really was expecting it to be through the lens of the feminine, because I'm a woman in a woman's body and I identify as a woman. So, you know, everything that I share tends to be through that lens naturally. But what's interesting is I'm also seeing how this is controlling the masculine too, which to me shows that this is a set of manipulative words and a system designed to disconnect us to our true sense of divinity and spirituality and our godly nature within ourselves that resides within us. I was going to say revived then, resides within us, within each of us. And it says that the virtue of pride is humility. And I really believe that actually the more one believes in themselves and the more one celebrates themselves and really has this sense of self-worth, the more humility naturally arises. They kind of go hand in hand. So again, there's this conflicting information going on here. I think a lot of this is to cause confusion and actual disconnect from ourselves too. Because when we believe in ourselves, truly believe in ourselves, we have nothing to prove. So we don't have that egotistical, showy behavior. We just do. We just are. And therefore, we are humble because we don't feel that we are better than others. We are just embodying the best version of ourselves because we believe in ourselves. So, pride, I'm here for it. I will sin, the root cause sin, until the day that I die. I say more self-worth, more pleasure in our achievements and celebrating others. Let's be more prideful. Gosh, the world would be a better place if each and every individual had just a little ounce of pride and self-belief in themselves. And this is just the beginning. Don't you think it's super interesting? Number 2. Okay, I need some more coffee. I need to finish this soon before it gets too late in the day. So, 7 deadly sin number 2, envy. And I like the Latin word for this as well, invidia. Invidia. I like words, and I like to say them and feel into how they make me feel, like the vibration. Invidia. Invidia sounds like invitation. So let's read. Okay, and I'll share, my own thoughts and feelings around envy, because this is I would say out of all of the sins, this is a more complex one. Envy, a selfish sadness or resentment, I think that's a better word, at another person's prosperity, often combined with a desire to see them fail or lose what they have. I think that is a pretty good description of envy. Now, I definitely wouldn't say that envy is a sin that is going to send you straight into the depths of hell. I mean, I don't actually believe in hell in the religious context that it is, just many different dimensions of this reality. However, envy and jealousy that causes us to obsessively have very, very hateful and toxic thoughts and feelings towards another, I would say is quite an evil poison. So I'm not actually against this one, but it's interesting the way that it says a selfish sadness. And what this sin is saying is that we shouldn't want what someone else has. And I think this is where the confusion comes in, because there is such a thing, I believe, as a healthy dose of comparison. And what the antidote to envy and jealousy is inspiration. So I actually feel that, on the very bottom of the ladder, let's say, in, let's call it vibrational resonance, if we go all the way down to the lowest vibrational resonance of this sin, that would be jealousy or bitterness or hatred, okay? And we can climb up that, and then it would be like comparison, comparing ourselves to that person and maybe feeling a bit bad. And then we can keep climbing, and it's like, oh my gosh, that person is living the life that I've always dreamed of. How awesome. Climbing up again. I'm so inspired by seeing other people do amazing things. It's the same sin, just on a different vibration. So I actually see this sin as an opportunity for a stepping stone, for us to climb all the way from that of hatred and bitterness, all the way up to like, fuck yeah, inspiration. And I share this because I've been on this journey too. But being on the receiving end of jealousy, I prefer to call it evil eye. It doesn't feel good. It actually really does not feel good. You can feel it like energetically, like someone else's poison is leaking into you. I actually kind of see it more as black magic than a sin. It's like, rather than giving energy or healing or expanding, it's taking. It's that like vampiric energy. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I see it, jealousy and envy, as an opportunity to reflect and be like, oh gosh, like why do I feel this way? What am I not giving to myself that I am like desperately seeking from external? Why am I comparing myself so much? So it's kind of like a mirror. It's like a mirror sin. I like the word sin. I don't know why. I think it's really cute. So cheers to that. But yeah, I did wonder why that was such a sin. Why was it not called like hatred or bitterness or resentment? Because to me, that's more of like a direct attack. Anyway, let's move on to number 3. Oh, okay. This is my second favorite sin. And that is wrath. Wait. Wrath! Because it sounds like a dragon roar. Even in the name, wrath. You can't even say that without going, wrath. And I guarantee you, if you say wrath 3 times as if you were a dragon, you're going to feel a whole lot better about yourself. I promise you. Try it now. Pause this video and try it. And the Latin word for that is ira. Ira. How mysterious. So, the description of wrath: intense, uncontrolled anger that seeks revenge or wills evil towards others. Sounds like a villain, doesn't it, wrath? I have a lot of issues with this sin. And I think it needs to be held accountable for how much emotional suppression is the norm right now in the modern world, and that we have been accustomed to, because we are told that anger is evil and wrong. But it's on so much more of a subtle level than that. As society, we've become so universally sensitive and censored that even speaking your mind is considered wrathful. And I actually experienced this with my family members, with close people around me. I could literally just be having a normal conversation and it could be taken as though I was being wrathful. That is how crazy this has gotten. So I feel that this deep-rooted belief system that we are told that anger is evil or scary or should be feared or should never be expressed has really woven its way very, very, quite scarily, deeply into the collective subconscious. Because anger is a very, very powerful, potent, important emotion that I believe could have the power to really change the tides of humanity in the world right now. Because without anger, there's no passion. Without anger, there's no forward motion. Without anger, there's no action. Anger is solar plexus. It's the divine masculine in his full power, taking action, wrapping the strong arms round the situation and saying, no more, no more. And we are seriously lacking that within ourselves and collectively in humanity right now. We look at the people who are leading the world, and I think I can speak for the majority of humans to say that we do not agree with what they do, what they say, how they act, how they represent us. And yet, because there is this lack of space for that aggression and emotional expression in a healthy way, it leaves us in this space of like, oh, what can we do? We don't have any power. Anger expressed can lead to passion, which can lead to personal power and forward moving action. Anger is the emotion of alchemy. If we're not angry about anything, we can just be, that awful phrase, blissfully ignorant, content, stagnant, comfortable. Comfortable gives me the ick, because I feel like if you're comfortable, you're actually really uncomfortable. If you're comfortable, you're probably lying to yourself. No offense to anyone that's watching this, because everything that I'm saying, I'm also talking to myself and reflecting back to myself. And you can even shout at the screen if you want. Remember, we're in a coffee shop together. We are having a caffeinated, fueled chat about the 7 deadly sins. And this is our safe space to express our rage. That's what we need. We need a global rage ceremony. You know, and what I find interesting about the wrath sin, is that it's telling us that intense anger is evil, but surely the thought of anger is only evil when it's expressed through actions such as violence, right? And why I find that interesting, and this is my own perspective and interpretation, is that when we look at world leaders, some of whom claim to be Christians or followers of God, who are leading wars which are mass processions of violence, murder, killing, oppression, and absolutely zero care for the lives of humans, surely they are acting on the sin of wrath. Intensified, uncontrolled anger that seeks revenge or wills evil towards others is war to me. That is war. It's not the anger itself. It's not the emotion. It's the action that is fueled by a toxic poison that's come from anger, which instead of being alchemized into passion for change, it has actually festered into this rotten desire for power. So that's my view on wrath. Wrath, I think, is a very healthy emotional expression. Sometimes getting angry and screaming can just feel so freaking good. Of course, not directed violently towards ourselves or others, but releasing that rage, having someone that you can just vent to, someone that's able to hold you in that, is really powerful and should absolutely not be considered sinful. No way. All right, let's move on to something quite the opposite to wrath. We have sloth. I like that word. And the Roman word, not Roman, Latin word for that is acedia. And the meaning or description of sloth as a sin is laziness and spiritual apathy, weariness regarding to one's duties towards God. Bearing in mind this set of belief system of control, just calling it for what it is, because it's telling you that if you do these things, you are inherently wrong and going to die or be put in a vice. It's in the names. These were created by men who believe that God is a masculine figure externally that lives somewhere beyond. They are not of the belief system, and they do not want us to believe that we have God and divinity within ourselves. Because if you are of the belief system that you are connected to God and God resides within and without you, then this kind of changes sloth entirely. Entirely. I'm all over the shop today with my words. I must be really excited. So, let's unpack this. First of all, we're being told that laziness is evil. And I can't help but feel that this could have had some influence on the very hyperproductive, ego-driven, toxic masculine, if you like, capitalist machine society that we live in, because we are made to believe that being lazy is inherently wrong or evil. Interesting, right? When in actuality, resting, stillness, slowing down, that is what opens us up to a much more expanded and deeper spiritual connection, because we are not distracting ourselves from external sources. So what I believe is the complete opposite. I actually believe that more laziness is needed in the world when it comes to our own connection to God. Stillness, rest, receiving, even boredom, all of these things are so juicy and important to our service to God and divine and our own spiritual journey. And yet sloth is telling us that that's evil. So there's something very interesting going on there. And I think that the antidote to sloth is self-care and self-development, slowing down, resting. There are, of course, some ways that we can be lazy where it can be self-sabotaging, or perhaps it's laziness in our relationships, which can actually be debilitating, but it all stems from our relationship to ourselves. But a little bit of laziness and lounging around is like medicine and balm for our heart and our soul. So as soon as I read sloth, I instantly thought, it's so interesting that we live, in the modern world, especially when you're in cities. I mean, I live in the countryside, so I've managed to really separate myself from that city mentality. But it's, heaven forbid you have a day of doing nothing, and it's something that we really have to deprogram ourselves from. I even find, and I've owned my own business for, how long is it now? Almost 7 years. I've been building it. I still find sometimes that I'm like, have to be doing things. And it's interesting that one of the 7 deadly sins tells us that laziness is a sin. So I'm going to move on from that one. One thing I will just say about sloth is that one of the magical aspects of the divine feminine, and when I say the divine feminine, it's just polarities, okay? It's got nothing to do with your body or your physicality. It's a polarity of energy, okay? We all have it, we all experience it, as within, so without. one of the aspects of the divine feminine is resting and receiving and openness. Could that be called laziness? Is sloth telling us that the divine feminine, or one of the aspects of the divine feminine, is a sin? I'll let you ponder that and decide for yourself. Okay, next we have greed, which is called avaricia. Avaricia. That sounds like a spirit guide. Avaricia makes it sound very like romantic. Let's read the description of this one. An insatiable desire for material wealth and possessions, often leading to treachery or fraud. And this one made me laugh, right? Because why doesn't it just say treachery or fraud? Why doesn't it say the sin is taking from others or deceiving others? This is why you've got to just really watch words, because words are spells. So this is telling us that wanting material wealth and possessions is a deadly sin. And to me, that is wild, and there is also the world famous saying, money is the root of all evil. Incorrect. Totally incorrect. Money is a currency, money is an energy, money is a material object and thing. It's many things, but it's not the root of all evil. Money isn't evil. Money is just money. Money is a tool that can be used to control and to manipulate, but it's not evil. It's not evil. And it's interesting because this system of control tells us, too much money is evil. But, excuse me, who's running the world right now? Yeah. When you really dig deep into this, you're just like, no, I'm just not having it anymore. I'm just not having it. And what I find interesting about greed is I see it so much across the whole spectrum of the spiritual community. And when I say that, I mean from all the way from religious to witches to all other kind of spiritual, new age, whatever, all different spiritual beliefs. I really see this sin have its claws in people, because there's just this story, this narrative of like, oh, I don't want money. I've got no desire to be rich. And to me, that's like, damn, like, where's your sense of self-worth, Where is your desire and longing for like luxury and pleasure? But also, and this takes me on to kind of the second bit, because when I looked up the sins, it says like kind of what the opposite is or what the virtue is. And it says it's generosity and charity. But hang on a minute. Surely the more money, wealth and success we have, the more we're able to give to others. Yes, you can do volunteering work, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. It doesn't cost you anything. But what about people who are barely earning enough to take care of themselves and their family, and then they're under this belief system that they have to give charity, so they're putting all of their free time into charity work, into volunteering, and they're just in this state. They might not feel like they're suffering, but it is under pressure, and it's a struggle to live and get by. What is inherently good about that? I truly believe that all beings have a birthright to have more than they need, to feel abundant, and to be able to be in overflow. An overflow of generosity. And for some people that might not mean being really rich, and that's okay. But there's nothing wrong with being rich. If you want to earn lots of money. There are some very, very rich people in the world who are not sharing their wealth but using it as a power tool. But I honestly believe there are an equal amount of incredible people with huge amounts of money who are giving so much of it away and helping. I mean, that, to me, that would be so awesome, to be able to travel the world and go to all different places. Even in my own country, in UK, like, the homelessness is out of control, and to be in a position of financial wealth and abundance where I could just go out and help so many people without even blinking an eye and without checking my bank account, that is freaking goals. That is goals. So I am in no way ever going to stop myself from desiring material wealth and possessions. Because if I can have it, other people can have it. And just as much as I think I deserve it, I also feel and know that everyone else deserves it. And maybe not everyone will experience financial abundance and safety in their lifetime. But the more of us that can reclaim it, the more that we can help others. So I'm not having that as a sin at all. To me, that is just total bullshit, to keep people in a poverty mindset, to keep us, the middleman, the working class man and woman, in this poverty mentality of thinking like, oh, we have enough, or thinking like, oh, only greedy or power possessed people go chasing money, or oh, you're materialistic. No, none of that bullshit. I am a good person who knows my worth and actually wants to claim my birthright. Whew, that was passion fueled. But I have my last bit of coffee for these last two. My favourite one is last. My favourite sin. What I find fascinating about these sins is the wording that they've used to describe the sins, which is different from what I have actually unpacked them to be. So their description and their interpretation of these sins, like, these are 7 deadly sins, right? These are things that we have been told that are totally deadly, that are vices, that are capital sins, for which we will be punished by God. And yet, they are rife in humanity, in the modern Western world. Rife. So again, there is this underlying theme of when we are suppressed and controlled, it actually causes us to do more, like to be stuck in that control system and therefore almost be possessed by it. And I'll come on to that, what I mean by that, with our next sin. And this one is interesting because this one is gluttony. And when you actually look up the meaning of gluttony, it just means to overindulge in food. And what's interesting is the Latin word for gluttony is gula, which is means sugar in Indonesian. I quite liked that. And I have my own spin on gluttony. So the description here is overindulgence or overconsumption of food, drink, or even experiences to an excess that impairs our reason. Very controlling. But what I find about this is like, yes, gluttony, overindulgence or overconsumption of food and drink. So why is this such an issue in modern day culture? It's, there is no denying that we are in an obesity epidemic, but also an addiction epidemic and a mental health epidemic. So I would actually say that the sin of gluttony is probably like totally normalized in the world right now. And yeah, I find this one interesting, but Here, gluttony says overindulgence. And I don't like that, because I really like the word indulgence. Indulgence is giving like pleasure and just knowing like what you want and what you're going to enjoy, and just indulging in that and like basking in that experience. So for me, indulgence is quite a beautiful word, or the embodiment of it is. So what I would say more is the energy of this is addiction, but it's not saying addiction. And what really gets under my skin about the 7 deadly sins is they are skirting around and not getting to the actual root cause of the issue. They're dancing around it and causing confusion and causing us to question ourselves, or causing these insidious patterns of self-destructive behavior and conditionings. Why I'm so passionate and irritated by this one is because what I believe the true root cause or true root issue of this one, gluttony, is not gluttony, it's not overindulgence, it's addiction. And addiction comes from something so much deeper within this like abandonment, or this deep painful wounding of addiction, of feeling so scared to really meet the truth of ourselves. And gluttony is not telling us that. Gluttony is telling us that it's a sin to overeat. And can we just take a moment to really acknowledge how toxic that is? Because when we look in social media, you know, there is just this obsession with being a certain height or weight or a certain way of looking. To me, this is like the manifestation of like insidious gluttony, this sin of gluttony. So this is what I mean by how these sins have caused these subtle, insidious patterns of conditioning within ourselves, especially women. My goddess, like thinking of my whole life, there has hardly been a moment where I haven't eaten a cake or a chocolate bar and thought, oh God, I'm going to get really fat now, or ugh, why did I eat that? Or this horrible conditioning, controlling voice telling me that I shouldn't be indulging myself in pleasure. And there is something just so wrong with that. So I feel that the issue at hand here is addiction from lack of love and this fear of facing the truth of who we are. So my antidote to gluttony, or addiction as I prefer to call it, is self-love and actually allowing ourselves to enjoy pleasure. Like actually doing something, but being totally conscious and aware of the pleasure of that. Because when we do that, and when we really become aware and slow down, we start craving things less. Yeah, and I feel like I could do a whole video just on that one, because I'm someone who has transformed through so many different addictive behavioral patterns, but it's something that I have to be constantly mindful of. Well, let's move on to the last sin, my favourite sin, the best sin ever, lust. And listen to the Latin word for lust. This is just so juicy. Luxuria. Who doesn't want luxuria? Like, if it's a deadly sin to be luxuria, then I'm already dead. So let's read the description. A disordered or intense desire for sexual pleasure for its own sake rather than as an expression of love. And apparently the virtue for this is chastity, so completely abstaining from sexual activity. I don't have anything against that. I do actually believe that periods of abstaining from sexual activity can be very powerful for periods of self-growth and development. But I have a lot of issues with this. First and foremost, the description of lust is a disordered or intense desire for sexual pleasure. How is that even a thing? Like, a disordered or intense desire for sexual pleasure. A desire for sexual pleasure is a normal human function. Sexual pleasure and sexual expression, I believe, is one of the most powerful, energetic, magic tools that we have in our arsenal. And we are told that it's inherently wrong. And as women, you know, we are told that, like, right now I'm wearing a sexy dress. So apparently that means that I'm doing it for the male gaze, because I want sex, because I'm desiring to be desired. When in actual fact, it couldn't be more opposite to that. I'm dressed the way I'm dressed because it makes me feel like a freaking badass. This is how I feel at my most powerful. This is where I feel, you can probably tell the way I'm talking, like, I feel liberated and empowered. I'm not doing it because I'm lusting after sex. Okay, so there is this real, again, discord in the meaning of this and the true problem, the true root of the problem, which is, in my opinion, pornography. So it's like the beastifying of a very sacred sensual act and a very sacred energy, which sexual energy, the beastifying and instant gratification, and just it becoming more and more grotesque and inhuman. That to me is like the root of the sin, because that is that almost like unquenchable, insidious, poisonous desire of filling this bottomless void, which really, let's be honest, what you're seeking is true connection and love. Yeah, and I would say that manifests more in males than it does females. But what females get is, we also get this thing where it's like, oh, I shouldn't be too sexy. If I dress or speak in this certain way, I'm going to get called a slut, or other women are going to be intimidated by me. And that is not fair. That is not okay. And also, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a sexual experience. We are in this human form. We have these bodies, we have energy, we have emotion, mind, senses. And when we bring those together, they're expanded. Yeah, I mean, there's whole teachings about the power of sexual energy and sexual liberation, but under the umbrella of the monotheistic religions and the 7 deadly sins, it's very much of the suppression of sexual desire and sexual energy. And by no means, I really do not like porn. I don't personally agree with that. I don't resonate with it. Obviously, I don't agree with being unfaithful or cheating on someone. And I feel that if someone is actually completely addicted to sex where they can't live without it, there is an underlying issue or trauma that needs to be looked at and worked with there. But wanting to have sex, wanting to feel sexy, wanting and desiring to experience sexual pleasure, and also expressing ourselves in a sexual, sensual way is really healthy, especially as women, I was walking the other day and one of my guides was showing me and I know this already, I logically know this, but they were showing me as women, our power is in our sacral chakra. And that is our yoni, that is our pleasure portal, our creative portal. The power is there. And the only way for us to experience that power is by expressing ourselves sensually, sexually, through pleasure. And I can feel this because I've started taking up pole dancing recently. I've started writing romantic and erotic poetry. Things like that they make me feel alive and confident. So I think the sin of lust, or making us feel that desiring sex or desiring sensual sexual energy is a sin, is, well, definitely probably the top ideal that is suppressing women and our freedom and our power and our liberation. And it's also the one that's really kind of warped our opinions about sex and about expression, because things have almost just got totally flipped upside down and just gone so freaking weird and distorted now. Yeah. So this one says the virtue is chastity, and I say the virtue or the antidote is liberated sexual expression. And why I say that, and this is my issue with pornography or sex addiction, things like that, is often it's behind closed doors. So then it becomes this this little demon that's just there and it's growing. But when we have an outlet to actually express those desires, whether that's through even just talking about it like I am, writing poetry, stories, artwork, dancing, moving, songs, whatever it may be, expressing some of those deepest, darkest desires, it moves it out of us in a way that it doesn't consume us. So I would say the sin around sexual desire is when we are consumed by an energy that we are not allowing ourselves to express freely. And why I share all of this is that I actually feel that the 7 deadly sins are a roadmap to personal power and liberation. And we need that in the world right now. We need to realize that we are frickin' badasses, and that everything that we've been told we shouldn't do, everything that we've been told is right or wrong, there's multiple different stories around that. And oftentimes we just need to slow down, be a bit more of a sloth. Slow down and read the blueprint, babe. Read the blueprint, read that fine print, and realize, hang on a minute, all of these things that I've been told make me wrong and sinful and evil aren't actually what I thought, because the words are actually manipulating me to think something other than the truth of what it really is. So I hope in my crazy, caffeinated, neurodivergent language today, you've been able to take away something that speaks to your heart, your mind, your body, your soul, your sensuality, in a way that you can take away and, you know, ask yourself, how can I show up in this world as a more true and authentic version and expression of my soul, whatever that means to you? Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this coffee shop chat. Please do let me know if you've got requests for the next one. And if you're not already, please do like, comment, share, subscribe to my channel. All the support means the world to me. I can't wait to see you next time. Sending you so much love.